Good morning, everybody. If you can hear me, please raise your hand. Thank you so much I see some hands raised. We'll be getting started momentarily. Okay, we're gonna start in a moment. I just wanted to do a little housekeeping and let everybody know that as you signed on to the call, you have been muted. We will be checking the question box if you have questions or comments or anything. So give us some patience as we go about this new technology. My name is Allison. If you don't recognize my voice, I usually am part of the plan meetings, and we're gonna get started. You should see just the housekeeping memo on the screen that just write your comments in, raise your hands, and we'll get to you the best that we can. And now I'm going to share our agenda. Here we go. Here's our agenda, and I'm going to kick it off to Renee Jaffe, our CEO, and she can start for us. So Renee, you're unmuted.
Good morning, everyone. Can everybody hear me? Allison, you can hear me?
Yes, you're doing great. I can hear you.
Perfect. That's a good sign. We're off to a great start. First, I just want to welcome you all for being on the call. I know there's a lot going on, and we've been sending a lot of information. And so we thought it would be really important that we are hosting these meetings on a regular basis so that you can get as much information and have your questions as much as possible. So that's something that we are going to be rolling out as well, just more frequent virtual meetings to answer your questions. Before I begin with some updates, I did just want to take the opportunity to thank you all. Again, I know these are scary times, both personally and professionally. I'm sure you have a lot of concerns related to health, but also about your businesses. And we feel your pain, and we want to do what we can to support you professionally and personally. I also think that if I don't know that there's a silver lining to this virus and what it's already done across the country, but I can say at least for once I'm hearing and reading what I already knew, and you already know, and that is how essential you guys are, the small businesses, the childcare providers are, to each and every community. And so for that, I thank you. And I hope that going forward, once we're on the other side of this virus, that everybody across the country takes a step back and recognizes the work that you all do for our children, and that you enable everyone who needs to go to work to go to work, and also that our children across the nation learn and prepare for kindergarten. So I thought this was a good time to kind of just put that out there. At least that's what resonates for me. Okay, now I'm going to jump in. I want to do a brief recap of what OEL has rolled out to date through their executive order that was approved by the governor's office. Just for anyone who's not been reading our emails or has not been on some of our other calls that we've had, I just want to make sure you're all aware that that providers will get paid whether you're open or closed. That is a business decision that is based on the health and safety of your staff and yourself and your families. That is, do you have first responders attending? Is it, do you have the staff to remain open with the smaller classroom? So this is a business decision, but regardless of whether you stay open or closed at this time, you will be reimbursed. Okay, if you're closed, you will be reimbursed based on your enrollments. OEL has eliminated any remaining child screenings or assessments for this program year, and our program year goes through June 30th. So those are, you don't have to worry about any assessments through to June 30th. In fact, our team, our staff, should right now be doing class assessments, but obviously that is on hold. We are not doing them for the remainder of the fiscal year. The other thing that's been put in place is an extended timeline for any provider improvement plans and reports. Those are on hold. For our families, we have suspended terminations of school readiness eligibility. We have also extended the timelines for redeterminations of school readiness eligibility. And OEL has waived copay fees for all eligible school readiness families, regardless of their income, effective April 1st. So those are some of the changes that came down and we've announced in communications and at our last question and answer session. Information about these provisions are on our website. We've posted a couple of question and answer documents if you need more details about them. Some new things that are going to be messaged in the near future. We don't have official messaging from OEL. However, we have been told that this has been approved, and that is that going forward for childcare providers that are open, effective April 1st, OEL and the state will be covering the cost of childcare for first responders and medical personnel. And we should be getting information and a flyer about that later this week. My hope is that we get it today, but I'm really not optimistic that we'll have that information. So basically what that means is that if there is a family and the parents are first responders, right? They're police officers, fire department officers, any kind of first responder, or they're in the medical profession, whether they're a nurse or a doctor or other essential medical staff, that ELC has permission to reimburse the provider for those families. OEL has set up a process for that that goes through the parent's employer, and the information gets to the ELC, and then we are approved to reimburse providers for that. In addition, those providers who care for a child of a medical personnel or first responder, there is going to be a provider bonus. I believe the amount is $500 per child per month for a maximum of 3 months. And there is a cap on that that OEL will be providing. So that is something that is brand new. We're waiting for more information about that, but this is something that has been given the green light for OEL to move forward with this. I also wanted to mention that OEL is thinking about a lot of other provisions to provide as much flexibility as possible to providers. While I don't want to say these are definites because they are not, but they have alerted us they are trying to be as flexible as possible. They are considering suspending the requirement for new curriculum. They are considering flexibility for the minimum VPK class size. They are considering extending timeframes for parents to submit documents. These are all things that they are really trying to be flexible on because they understand the nature and criticalness of the virus and the toll that it's taking on everyone. So we will continue to keep you updated on those things. Again, those last things that I just kind of bulleted out after I informed you that OEL is trying to be flexible. Those are not definites. Those are just some things that they're considering. And that as things roll out, we will of course keep you updated. Later on in the presentation, Pablo, our Director of Community Engagement, is going to go through some of the relief efforts that are in place that came out of our federal government and that were approved, I believe, a week and a half ago. Included in that CARES Act, you've probably heard on the news, the CARES Act, you've seen it in our literature. There is funding of $3.5 billion in emergency funding to support childcare, okay? It's through the Child Care and Development Block Grant, which is where a lot of our funding for school readiness comes from. So the government is going to put in $3.5 billion, which is going to trickle down to the states. The amount that we've seen for Florida hovers around $211 million in Florida. And some of the things in that CARES Act that the federal government has stated they want this money to go towards is continued payments and assistance to childcare providers in the case of decreased enrollment or closures related to the coronavirus, and to ensure they're able to open or close, and if they are closed, that they will be able to reopen as appropriate. They also wanted to provide childcare assistance without regard to income to the healthcare sector employees, emergency responders, sanitation workers, and other workers deemed essential during the response to the coronavirus. And the other area is to provide funding to childcare providers who were not participating in subsidy prior to the public health emergency for the purpose of cleaning and sanitation and other activities necessary to maintain or resume the operations of the programs. So this is those items that I just listed out. There were 3 of them. That's what's in the CARES Act. It is up to the state to decide how these funds are going to be used and the allocation to each community. So we don't know yet how much Broward is going to get, and we don't have any directives yet on what that will be for. But as you can see, OEL has already started to roll out provisions to in ways that they can use those dollars with some of the things that they've already put in place. At the ELC, we will continue to push them in order to better support our providers and our families in this community. We are hoping to send out a very, very brief survey in the near future to get your feedback about what your needs are. We don't want to add work to your load at this time. We know there is a lot going on, but we are interested in hearing what your needs are and how we can help you and how OEL can help you as well. So we will be communicating about that survey in the near future. With that, if you have any questions, you can enter them in the chat feature or raise your hand about these. Again, this is just the first segment that we'll be covering, so we will go into a lot more information, and my staff will be, kind of going further into some of these areas.
Okay, thank you, Renee.
You're welcome.
I am going to now turn it over to Sandra Paul, who will be speaking about EFS mod and provider payments. Sandra, you're unmuted.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, everyone. Welcome. I'm going to go over the family fees and parent copay. As Renee just said, beginning April the 1st, providers are asked not to collect school readiness parent copay. You will be reimbursed for this copayment when we process April reimbursement. That means the parent fees will be added back to the net reimbursement. If you've got any question, just don't hesitate to ask the reimbursement staff. Virtual instructions. Providers are more than welcome to offer this type of virtual learning they choose, and we would never discourage them from providing these services. However, the interpretation of the VPK attendance rule is that children are physically in attendance at the childcare provider during the VPK hours. At this time, there is no instructions for providers who are participating in virtual learning on how they should mark the children on the attendance roster. We are following the rules of school closures as defined by OEL to pay. For absences, if a school is closed to children, then the provider will have a temporary closure day. The payment staff will enter the temporary closure, and the providers will be paid for those days. If the school is opened, the provider should mark the children present or absent on their rosters. You do not need to collect or submit documentation for your absences. As Renee said, you will be paid for the absences for active enrollments. The closure dates. We are processing March's reimbursement, and we need to know whether your school was opened or closed. The payment staff is calling or emailing each provider for this information. Please be sure to respond to this because we need to complete the payment on time. We are counting on each of you to help us with this task. If you have any questions or you need help in getting information to us, please reach out to me or my staff. We will be sure to help you with this. If you have any questions and need answers, you can please put information in the question box and we will sure be able to answer at the very end. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you, Sandra. We're gonna switch it over now to William Karp. I'm going to unmute him. William, are you there? I know he's on the call, but I'm not quite sure. I think he's on the phone. So we'll give him a moment to connect with us. While we're waiting for this moment for William to connect, I wanted to highlight the fact that in this presentation, you have a box on the side that says handouts. In the handouts, you have two. One is the agenda for today, and one is a list of upcoming virtual trainings that the education staff will be facilitating in the next 3 weeks. It's 3 different training series. I urge you to check them out, share it with your staff. They will be fabulous online. We're all learning this new technology, so please check those out. And I don't know if William is there, so we will jump to William and we'll try to get a hold of him. And I will now send it over to Amy Unger and Howard. So I will unmute both of you one at a time. Amy, you are now unmuted, and Howard, try to wait 1 second. I'm sure you have stuff to say. Okay, you guys are unmuted.
Thanks, Allison. Hi, everybody. So the provider relations team is marching on with an eye to the future. A few reminders for you. First of all, we have been reaching out to confirm everybody's status right now as far as who's operating and who's closed. So if you have a change in anything that you've reported to us, please stay in touch with your provider relations specialist and let them know. We have a number of providers who had reported their closures fairly early and anticipated reopening by now. We're reaching out to people, assuming that they're likely still closed, but we don't want to just make assumptions. So if anything has changed since you last spoke with your provider relations specialist or completed the survey, please reach back out again so that we have accurate information to share with families who might still be looking for childcare services. Also, another reminder about your 2021 provider profiles. We are about halfway done with those, but we still have a number that are in rejected status. So we are asking you, if you've already submitted your profile, to just take a look at the status and see if it was made active or if it was rejected back to you for some changes. If you have not yet completed your 2021 profile, now's a good time to do it. We're kind of focused solely on those at the moment, so you'll probably get a pretty quick return time. So just keep that in mind. We don't have school readiness contracts available yet. We're still waiting for OEL to complete the contract and upload it to the provider portal. So we are planning to go ahead and move forward with your VPK contracts for next year. So if you are intending to offer VPK for the 2021 school year, the week of April 20th, you can expect to see your VPK contract initiated for you on the portal for completion. If you were one of the providers who found out you were a provider on probation for the upcoming program year, just want to remind you that you need to have an improvement plan approved 30 days prior to the program start date. So you definitely want to be working on your improvement plans at this time. And with that, I'll hand it over to Howard.
Wait, before you hand it over to Howard, I'm gonna throw it back to you, Amy. I'm so sorry, but I do
That's
have
okay, I'm still here.
that I want to throw your way. One question that we received is, do we send our closure letter to our ELC rep? So do they have to send a letter to you, to your staff?
Yes, if you would send it to your provider relations specialist. I know sometimes there's confusion between who's payment and who's provider relations. Your provider relations specialist would either be Jeanette Lindor, Anna DiGiovanna, Felicia Walker DeSam, Lucia Rodriguez, Lady Coriel, or Angie Palomino. So one of those names should sound familiar to you. That's who you want to notify of your closures. We will pass that on to your payment specialist. I know that they were asking for dates as well for your March attendance, so we can share with them. If you received a written document from your payment specialist, they are hoping to receive that back. So make sure you check your email. They need to know the exact dates to put in for your closure for your attendance.
Okay, and thank you, Amy. We have another question that I'm gonna throw your way for VPK program, will the program finish in June as per calendar, or will it be extended?
We don't have an answer for that yet. I think everything is still up in the air. Depending on how long this goes on, there's a possibility that they would extend it, but I think there's an equal possibility that we won't resume at all. Every 15 days, OEL is reevaluating what the status is and making determinations. So we're really just taking it a couple weeks at a time. And as we get more information, we'll share that with everybody.
Thank you, Amy. And one more question. VPK absences, are they being processed the same as SR?
So absence, meaning the center is still open and operating, you would enter that as an absence on your calendar. They are being processed differently from SR, only that there's usually an 80-20 rule with VPK, where you're only paid for a certain number of absences. For the month of March, they did not do the 80-20 recalculation. Again, we're taking it a few weeks at a time, so we haven't got an answer for April yet, but it's possible, and I would think likely, that the same determination will be made for April. So at this point, you're just entering them with the absence code, and it's being handled here at the ELC as far as how you get paid for it. But you're getting paid for your absences 100% for the month of March.
Okay, thank you, Amy. William, if you're listening, which I believe you are, I cannot unmute you. You have to plug in your audio pin, which is pound 92. So please, William, enter in your audio pin, and then we will be able to hear you. So now, in the meantime, we will turn it back over to Howard.
All right. Thanks, Allison. Hi, everyone. I hope you're all doing okay and staying safe and socially distant. So you see the agenda item is back to business, the other side of this. We know right now we're probably about in the middle of this, but no time like the present to plan to be back in business. And as I say that, I'm channeling Robin Perlman and BLI. So I'm sure lots of BLI graduates are on this call. And if you aren't a BLI graduate, shameless plug, BLI, the Early Learning Coalition contracts with BLI, which is the Business Leadership Institute. And if you want to be part of Robin's next upcoming class, we will, in our minutes to this plan meeting, put Robin's info in there so that you can contact her directly. But back to the business at hand, the other side of this. So planning for reopening. The most crucial thing for us, at least, and for parents, is let us know as soon as you know the actual date you're planning to reopen, because we update each day, sending to OEL and also posting on our website centers and homes that are open and those that are closed. So a lot of parents are going on our website looking down the list to see which centers are open and closed. So it'd be hugely helpful, both for to stop confusion with parents and stop a call volume that we won't necessarily be able to get to that quickly to answer a simple question of open versus closed. Saying that, I would anticipate and figure that many of you, if not all of you, are contacting your families daily or weekly just to stay in touch, to know that they are still there and planning to come back to your childcare business when all of this is over. Hugely important, to keep those folks, because as Renee said right at the beginning, OEL has agreed to pay for enrollment, whether you're open or closed. But as families may transfer from your center, OEL hasn't made the promise to continue paying after your children are long gone. So be careful about that. Really, we have, and that said, we have not seen almost any transfers to date, because they, parents would be calling us to transfer centers. Just to put your minds at ease, that is not occurring. Folks are keeping their kids at home almost entirely. We have a few transfers, but really not many at all. But just remember, as the sun starts to come up again, families are going to start saying, maybe it's time. Maybe it's time to send my children back. Maybe it's safe. So just to be in front of that, hugely, hugely important. And also, what do you need, obviously, to reopen? You need your staff. So to be in touch with your staff, and this will be in the survey that we're sending out about provider needs. We want to know if you're planning to be fully staffed. Are your folks still on your payroll? No judgment, by the way, if they're not. If you needed to close and couldn't pay anyone, and now maybe see some ways to pay folks to bring them back on the payroll between the stimulus dollars in general and the childcare stimulus dollars. I'm guessing you guys are seeing ways to do this, but we want to make sure when you're open that you're open in all of your classrooms if possible. So giving your employees a virtual hug these days doesn't hurt. This agenda item is going to become more and more specific and crucial as we get closer to opening, because as you've also heard, we don't have a huge amount of solid answers yet from OEL on what that will look like. But as soon as we know, we'll let you know. All right, that's all I have to say at this point. Allison.
That's great. Thank you, Howard. And now I am happy to announce that we do have William, and he should be unmuted now. So welcome, William.
Thank you. Am I unmuted?
You are great.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So wow, I was able to hear part of Howard's presentation, and I just want to start this by giving you all an amazing virtual hug because what you're doing is awesome, and what we're all doing is completely uncharted. It's all new, and boy, are we learning a lot. So I wanted to give you a couple of updates as to what's going on from licensing. We have temporarily suspended on-site inspections. So how does that affect you? If anybody happens to be on this call that is in the process of trying to become licensed with a new program, that is completely on hold. We are not opening new facilities or family child care homes at this point. And I don't know the date that we will start that again, but at this point, unless a potential provider can provide us with a compelling reason why they would be able to provide some kind of a service in an area that it is non-existent and needed, that would really be the only exception where we would, during this period, work on licensing a new provider. So for existing providers, we have also suspended conducting on-site regular inspections. So what this means is we have created kind of an emergency remote inspection process. Probably a few of you have received this already. As your inspections are due, we will be conducting inspections in this manner. What that involves is the person who your licensing counselor will contact you. Make sure you have some time to talk to them, because during these days, lots of directors are doing lots of things, so they will schedule it at a time that's mutually convenient for the director and for the counselor. They will go over the details of the remote inspection, some of the things they will ask you by phone, some of the things they will ask you to email certain documents to them, and some things they're going to ask you to complete an attestation verifying certain items. That is really the extent of what it will be at this point. When they complete the inspection, they will give you time to submit whatever documents that they are going to be requesting. Once they review the documents, they will contact you again. If there's any question or need for clarification, that there'll be time to discuss those. And then they will actually write the report and email it to you. Since it's not signed, we are asking that when you get the emailed copy, you email confirmation that you received it back to them. And that's really what the remote inspection process will be. If you have any questions about that or any concerns, please feel free to contact your licensing counselor or myself. We are all still working. I would ask that we all try and do our best to cooperate with this process, because the whole point of this is to keep the number of people going in and out of your facility limited wherever possible. And what we don't want to do is set up a situation where we have to come out to do a regular inspection that really could be done remotely. All the providers that we have worked with so far doing remote inspections have been terrific. We had one provider who just continued to say they did not have time to send us the paperwork that we were asking for. And in that situation, we had no choice but to do the inspection, limiting all that information, and so we were not able to find them in compliance with those areas. So as I said, that was just one provider out of many, but I want to really encourage you to do your best to work closely with us on this process. If you need a little extra time, that's fine. If the time that the counselor calls you is not a good time, that's fine. We're just looking for a way to make sure that we are getting information so that we can verify that you're operating essentially in compliance with the rules. That's basically the remote inspection process. I guess, Allison, if there's any questions, you'll let me know about that.
Yeah, I actually have one or two questions waiting for you. So.
Should I stop before I start talking about the next stuff, or do you want me to answer the questions?
I can ask you the questions.
Okay.
So when the providers reopen, will the ratios change, and how long are providers to follow the CDC guidelines? Is there any projected date?
Okay. So that really wasn't about remote. That's actually a good segue into the next stuff I was going to talk about.
Right.
So perfect. Thank you for the questions. So regarding the time frame for the CDC guidelines, the CDC has not. We're basically going based on their recommendations, and they have not projected yet when those rules will be lifted. So at this point, we will certainly do our best to remain in touch with everybody. And we've been trying to communicate with people through our email, through the plan meetings, through the BLI Zoom meetings. We will be participating in those. Our Facebook page, and for those of you who participate in I Am Ready for K Facebook page, we're trying to keep all this information in all those venues. So we're playing it by ear in terms of that. So regarding ratios, at this point, Broward County has a local licensing agency, and so we can have rules that are more stringent, but not less stringent than the state. So even if Broward County were to want to lift rules related to ratio, we can't, because if the state doesn't, we still have to comply with the state standards. So I would just say to stay tuned if there's going to be any change related to any rules for reopening. So a couple other things I wanted to address regarding reopening. There is a rule in the standards that talks about if a provider is closed for a period more than 3 weeks, that they have to be inspected by our staff prior to reopening. That's being waived at this time. So for any providers who are closed, or if any of you who are not closed do end up closing, you do not have to wait for us to come out to reopen. You just reopen when you want, when you think it's appropriate for your community and your clientele and your staff. So what we just ask is that we're trying to maintain pretty regular contact with providers. We have a GIS map on our website that indicates providers that are open and providers that are closed. So people who are looking for childcare or providers who are trying to help find alternative places for their clientele can use that. So we would ask, if your status changes, let us know so we can get that there for you on our map, because we want to make sure we have reliable information as to who's open and who's closed. The other thing I wanted to address was there's some providers who are wanting to market themselves to groups of families or children that maybe they didn't have on their license prior to all of this. So that would be specifically providers who are not licensed for school-age care, who might want to start to enroll school-age children. Same thing for temporary drop-in, as well as for weekend care. those items do not, we are suspending the requirement for a inspection prior to enrolling children in any of those arenas. So we would just ask that you let us know, and so we can make sure that our database is updated. But you don't have to wait for approval from us to add any of those things. The exception would be for infant care. If you want to add infant care, we would ask that prior to enrolling infants, that you contact your counselor or someone here at our office, and we will walk you through the process to make sure, because there are specific standards that we would have to have verified prior to enrolling infants. At this point, if during this period of time you have a fire inspection that expires, we're recommending that you contact your local fire enforcement office as early as possible if it's going to expire sometime soon, to ask them what they're doing in terms of fire inspections. Each municipality would be different, or is different rather, in terms of how they're interpreting the guidelines. So work directly with them and just keep in touch with your licensing counselor to let them know what's going on regarding your fire inspection. That's basically all I had for my presentation. I guess we're all noticing that there's a lot of businesses that are adapting their business plans to respond to this new world we're living in, and the childcare industry is no different. So we all are trying to remain as open, as flexible as we can be regarding not trying very hard not to let any rule stand in the way of a provider doing the right thing. So if you have some business revision that you want to discuss with us, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. And I guess I'll take questions now.
Okay, great, because I have a few.
Okay.
Okay. How can we manage our immunization forms, the blue and yellow forms, upon reopening? We have some forms expiring while we are closed, and we don't know if parents are going to have them ready.
Great question. So in addition to a lot of the other things that expire during this period, those health exams are in that situation also. And of course, the last thing doctors' offices want, or anybody wants to do, is go to a doctor's office with a perfectly healthy child to just get these forms filled out. So yes, there'll be a grace period that will be established. At this point, I can't tell you how long it would be, because we don't know how long it will be before we go back to normal. But for those things that are expired, just work with your families as to what makes the most sense for them. But we're not going to cite anybody for being delayed on that.
Okay, great. Another question that came in, if our city tells us they can't conduct the fire inspection during this time and we end up with an expired inspection, do we need to let you guys know?
Yeah, I think it's always really important to keep us abreast of what's going on, because some of the cities are going to decline to do the inspection, and we're going to do our best to not have it impact in any way on your ability to stay in business. If you're remaining open, we want to make sure that you can that rules don't get in the way of your ability to remain open. So if you're in that situation, just contact your licensing counselor, and we'll try and work out a plan together.
Great. And then I'm not sure if you covered this already. Can you just kind of do a recap on the process to renew a license at the current moment?
Yeah. So I did not address that before, so it's a great question. About 25% of providers, childcare facility providers, have licenses that will be expiring on June 30th. So we will be emailing to everybody the sort of general instructions as we have for the last couple of years, typically done by mail, but we will probably be emailing it to everybody. And the process will remain the same. you'll submit, your packet completed. So if there's anything in the packet you're not able to submit, like a good example would be the fire inspection. If you're unable to, just explain that to your licensing counselor. But the process is going to be pretty much the same at this point. You should be getting that letter within the next week or two, or the email within the next week or two with the instructions. You just submit it by mail. The only big difference is I know a lot of providers like to hand deliver them. Our building it's not that it's closed, but they're really discouraging people from coming to our building. So I would encourage people to mail it. If you want to bring it, you're certainly welcome to. But we're just supposed to encourage people to not come in the building. So I don't want you to feel like you can't, but we'd encourage that. So at this point, the other part of the piece will be the license itself. We will probably be, in the past, we've emailed and mailed them to you. We probably will be just emailing them. So you would need to print out the license yourself.
So, and just to confirm, you're on hold with relicensing inspections. You had said that, right?
No, we're going to be doing relicensing. The only ones that we're not doing at all are pre-licensing for new providers.
Okay.
But providers that are currently licensed, the remote inspection process that I talked about earlier will be for relicensing inspections as well as other kinds of inspections.
Awesome.
The only on-site inspection at this point that we would be compelled to do would be either if a provider really we were not able to get them to cooperate at all with a remote inspection, which I think is, with the exception of our one little blip, I don't see that as necessarily an issue. The only other kind of on-site inspection we might do is if we do get a complaint and the complaint is related to a serious safety issue that cannot be investigated remotely. Short of that, we are doing our best to respect your infection control practices as well as to protect our staff.
Thanks so much.
Great. And 2 more questions for you.
Sure.
Will there also be a grace period with the staff form number 8?
Yes. Yeah. So the staff form number 8, this is an easy one for us because that's only a Broward rule. That doesn't exist in the rest of the state. So yes, we have total control over that. So anything related to going to see the doctor, we want to really respect doctors' offices, not being crowded with people who are perfectly well, but just need some form signed. So yes, there will definitely be. I can't tell you at this point how long it would be, but yes, there will definitely be a grace period for that.
And this is my last question at this moment. I reserve the right to still continue to ask questions throughout the call. But will there be new cleaning requirements when schools reopen?
At this point, there has been nothing from any of our partners related to new or revised requirements. So I guess it's another one of those things that let's all stay tuned. Everybody's being strongly encouraged to, step up their sanitizing and disinfecting procedures. And when we get to the other side of this, among the many things that we'll celebrate, in addition to the Howard's virtual hugs, we will celebrate the ability to just relax a little bit on some of the high maintenance that we're all involved in. If there are ongoing changes to rules related to that, we will do our best to let you know.
Great. Well, thank you, William. As always, we appreciate you being a part of our call, and I'm not dismissing you just yet.
Okay. All right. I'm not going to hang up until you actually tell me to.
Okay.
You're stuck with me, Allison.
Yes. No, I would have it no other way. So
wonderful.
Hang on there. So I am going to now turn it over to, I'm going to mute William. Bear with me, as you know, this is all new technology. for all of us. Okay. Not sure if that worked, but, and now the next part of the agenda is financial assistance to childcare, small businesses. So what I'm gonna do now is turn it over to Pablo, and I'm going to make him a presenter. That way you'll be able, I believe he has some slides to share with you all. So as we get that up and running, give us a moment. And again, remember, check out, if you're not able to see our handouts on here, you just look out for emails for our upcoming trainings that are virtual. If you've had the luxury to attend any that we've done in the past week, I've been your hostess. And moving forward, we will have other members of the education team wow you with their knowledge, which is great because you're probably getting a little tired of my voice. And now I believe, Pablo, you should. Okay, Pablo, you should be good to go.
Hi, can everybody hear me?
Yes, we hear you now.
Outstanding. Good morning, everybody. Happy Wednesday. It is great to be able to meet with everybody in this new environment. And I'm happy to be able to share with you some of the available assistance and financial assistance options that are part of the new laws passed by Congress for COVID-19 related economic losses. The ones we're going to cover today are the state of Florida's emergency bridge loan, the SBA's economic injury disaster loan, and the paycheck protection programs, and also cover some other sources of detailed assistance. We are not the experts in financial loans and all these different things, but we want to refer you directly to those who are, such as the SBA and other groups that are going to have guidance available. So the first one is the Florida Emergency Bridge Loan. This is run by the state of Florida, and it is, as the name says, a bridge loan intended to bridge the gap until longer-term recovery resources, such as the federal disaster assistance programs, are available. This is only available for for-profit businesses with 2 to 100 employees. So it's not available for nonprofits or sole proprietors or independent contractors. It is up to $50,000 for each eligible business. It is a 1-year term. After the first year is interest-free. After that, it becomes a 12% loan rate. In order to go through the process, and by the way, we'll send out the slides later, and the link is at the end of the presentation as well. But you have to certify that you're in the process of or have already applied for other loan or assistance programs. And this can be used to maintain or restart a business. In terms of existing debts, it is authorized on a case-by-case basis. When you fill out the application and you have a contact with the state of Florida, they'll be able to answer more detailed questions about what you can use their funding for. And this should really be your first step. I know that some of you have already done this. But this is something that you should do because it'll probably get processed a little bit faster than the other 2 federal grants and loan programs that we're going to talk about. So there was an existing program under the Small Business Administration called Economic Injury Disaster Loans, or EIDL. These were loans that you would get, for example, if you were impacted by a hurricane or another kind of natural disaster. They've greatly expanded this to help in the response to COVID-19 economic crisis. So this is open to both for-profit and nonprofit businesses. It is up to $2 million for each eligible small business or nonprofit. It is up to a 30-year term from origination. It'll probably not be 30 years for everybody who applies. It is a 3.75% loan for businesses and 2.75% for nonprofits, but these must be repaid. Applicants must go directly through the Small Business Administration. Even if you already have another business loan that is with a commercial bank that maybe is already backed by the SBA, or if you have a previous idle loan, such as from Hurricane Irma, you have to go through the SBA directly to get these. These are fairly flexible. There's no limits on what you can use it for in regards to payroll, paying mortgage, paying rent, paying debt or other operational costs. You can receive, after submitting not a successful, but a complete application, you may be eligible to receive up to a $10,000 advance, which can be forgivable, but the remaining portion of whatever you're asking for has to be repaid. And that again is through the Small Business Administration directly, and they are the idle loans. The next one is new. This is part of the CARES Act that was passed about a week and a half ago. The Paycheck Protection Program. These are funds that are really meant to be used to cover payroll to keep your employees with the business. So it's eligible, it's open to both for-profits and nonprofit businesses. They're eligible to apply. The amount is capped at $10 million for each eligible small business or $100,000 for owners and independent contractors. However, the amount that they're really going to give you is going to be 2.5 times your average monthly payroll as averaged between January 2019 to February 2020. So you want to be able to get all of your payroll records going back to that time and average them together, multiply that by 2.5, and that is going to be your cap. So for some folks, it's going to be less than that $10 million. The term of the loan is 2 years from origination at 1%. Some of them are going to be available for less than 1%. But, and here's the really interesting and fantastic portion of this, all eligible expenses that are incurred during an 8-week period, starting from the loan date and ending before June 30th of this year, may be forgivable in an entirety. So this is really an incentive to try and bring folks back if they were maybe furloughed or laid off, or to keep the staff paid, even if your center is not necessarily open or able to have children at this time. So applicants have to go through an existing SBA 7A authorized lender. So this may be the commercial institution you're currently banking with. If not, when you go on to this section of the Small Business Administration website, they have a marketplace where you can connect based on your business type and your business size and your operations with a group of eligible lenders that is being added to on a day-to-day basis, because the Treasury Department and the SBA really want to expand the amount of banks, credit unions, and other organizations that are able to work and authorize this. These, you cannot go through the SBA directly. It has to be with one of those commercial institutions. Now, the other portion, and I have another slide that goes into more detail, for the loans to be forgivable, at least 3/4 of it, 75% or more of whatever amount you get from the PPP loan, must be used to maintain prior staffing levels, although you are able to rehire staff, or if those staff are not available, to bring back new staff. So if you had 4 employees and you're down to 2, you can bring one of them back. If the fourth one is unable to come back, you can hire another person. They basically want you to keep your staffing levels before the coronavirus emergency intact as much as you're able to. There are other restrictions on the PPP, in that you can only pay interest owed on mortgages or other business debts. So you're not able to make payments towards the principal. You should contact your mortgage company or your other creditors and find out which portion of your monthly payment is principal and which portion is interest, and they can give you that information. Again, this goes into the fine print a little bit more for what's required in the Paycheck Protection Program in order for you to be eligible for that forgiveness towards the end. So the big one is that minimum 75% of 75 cents of every dollar that you get under this program has to be spent on payroll. So that includes the actual payment to the staff, all state and local taxes, unemployment insurance, everything else. It includes medical insurance premiums. It's not listed here, but it also includes any kind of retirement or pension contributions. Now, this is a little restriction that the EIDL loan does not have. You cannot include payments made to independent contractors under this loan. However, they're able to apply for a PPP loan separately. So let's say that you have a center and you have 6 people, 5 of which are directly in your payroll, and then a last person is really paid as an independent contractor through a 1099. They would have the ability to apply for this on their own, but you would not be able to include them unless they were a directly payroll employee. And by the way, this also applies to all of your part-time staff. So what about the remaining 25% for the loan that you get under the PPP? Well, you can use it to pay 100% of the rent payment, all your utilities, and then again, as I mentioned, you can make interest payments only on mortgages and other loans. Part of the requirements for potential forgiveness from the PPP loans is that you cannot reduce your staffing levels, although, as I said, you can rehire or you can bring new people in, or reduce the wages of your staff by more than 25%. That's really important. And again, when you get to the SBA's website or you're looking at other resources, they'll go into this in a lot more detail, but those are some of the big restrictions that you need to keep in mind. So again, I hope this is a little bit clear to have both of them on one page. It explains what some of the uses, restrictions can be, the amounts, and again, consult with the professionals either at the SBA Customer Service Center or your banking institution for the full specific details. This may change. One of the things that we heard repeatedly on the SBA webinars that we were on this week and last week is that they're building the plane as they're flying it. This was only passed by Congress and signed into law just about a week and a half ago. So a lot of this regulation is still being developed and being written. Last Friday was the first day that they were supposed to have the PPP loans available, and the rollout didn't quite work. So it's starting again this week. Independent contractors and sole proprietors will be able to apply for those as well, as I said earlier. This is a little chart that may help you figure out what you're able to apply for. As I mentioned earlier, sole proprietors and independent contractors can apply for both the PPP and the EIDL loans. However, they're also eligible to apply for the unemployment insurance. One of the important things to keep in mind is that you cannot apply for the same loss under 2 different loans. So for example, you could apply for the Paycheck Protection Program to cover payroll for the months of April and May, but you could not also apply for an EIDL loan for the same time. You could apply, for example, for an EIDL loan to cover the month of March, and then apply for a PPP loan to cover April and May. Basically, as you can imagine, the federal government does not want anybody to double dip on these benefits. Right now, the regulations are, like I said, still being fully fleshed out, but that's one of the things that they're very clear about, and they will be putting a lot of fraud and abuse investigation on the tail end on this. So be very careful when you're going through this, when you talk to your banking professionals, to make sure that your loans, if you're applying for more than one at the same time, that you may not be at risk of breaking some of those requirements where you have to have different things covered under different loans. So in terms of getting specific detailed assistance for the, I'm sure, 365 questions that you may have in terms of how will this apply to my business? What if I have more than one center? What if there are multiple owners, but one has majority in one center and one doesn't? We, again, are not the experts on these. However, the Small Business Administration is having this through their South Florida district office, is having rolling call-in webinars where folks can come to them with all these very specific questions. So that information is posted on the screen. Again, this will be emailed out to the attendees, and they will be providing more dates and times in the future. As soon as we get them, we'll forward them to you and make them available as well. I would strongly recommend that you get as much information from the horse's mouth as you can. So the Small Business Administration really is going to be the ones that are expert on these programs because they're being run out of that agency. However, there is other assistance that is available from some of the other business groups and nonprofits and chambers of commerce. So these are two that are coming up tomorrow. One of them is from NACCE, and the other one is from the Hallandale Beach Chamber of Commerce. Again, they should be covering a lot of the same information, but since they're not coming directly from the SBA, just be mindful of what you're able to glean from those. And again, make sure that you get as many questions, preferably in writing with the SBA customer service staff or with your financial institution if you're going for one of the PPP loans. There are also some good recorded webinars through Child Care Aware America that talk about not just applying for some of the loans like the EIDL and PPP, but also really good emergency response trainings on how centers can adapt. A lot of the things that you guys have already been working on so hard for the last few weeks. They've compiled some best practices from around the country, and you can get some information on there that might make it a little bit better through the situation. Below are the official links to where you can apply and get the specific details for the 3 different loan types that are available here, and also some information that can change from the Florida Chamber of Commerce that both of the websites, the second last and the second to last websites are updated on a routine basis, as are the federal and state loan websites. So if you log in today and then you start getting your documents ready for the application process, and then you log in on Friday and the website looks a little bit different, or the form, online form that you have to fill out has changed, take a deep breath. Like I mentioned before, this is part of the growing pains that they're having with some of these new regulations. So just adapt with the process. What I can say from the SBA presentations that I've been able to watch is that they're really erring on the side of keeping things simpler than they have ever in the past, because they want to get the funds out, not just obligated, but actually in the direct deposited into the accounts of as many businesses as possible, as quickly as possible. But again, the volume of applications that they're receiving is vastly larger than anything they've had in the past, even after severe interruptions in business like hurricanes and things of that nature. So the SBA and your banking institution will again be able to tell you more specific information about how long it'll take. But the sooner you get the information required to apply for the loans, and again, the details are going to be in each of those websites, the faster you can submit your application, the faster you can hear back. Having been on the processing side of some of these things before, the best way to get your application done is to have as much information as possible submitted the first time so that they can complete it. And if anything is missing, they can get it back to you, and you can supply that information. I would strongly recommend that you focus on this as quickly as you're able to and submit, even if you may not think that there's an immediate need and you anticipate a need later on. Go ahead and submit your application now. Get in line while the funds are still flowing and they're still available. And as I mentioned before, as we get more information, we will make sure to share it with folks. If anybody has some specific questions about where to get this information, you can reach out to me. If you have specific questions, again, reach out to the companies and agencies that are running the programs.
Thank you, Pablo. If you can just make me the presenter again. I would
How do I do that?
see.
Change presenter?
Yes. Thank you. So one moment. We are going to turn it back over to Howard. Let me just double check to see if he is muted or not. What a joy to have Howard muted, but now we will unmute him. You are unmuted, Howard.
I will not stay muted, Allison. Just to recap really quickly what Pablo is telling you is all of you small businesses actually have an opportunity in front of you to make yourselves whole. And we really want you to take that opportunity. It may sound a little daunting, but remember, if you guys have good banking relationships, call your bank. They can help you out with this. A lot of them, certainly the larger banks, are doing these loans or working with the Small Business Association to do that stuff. And even if they're not, even if you're going on the SBA website to look at all this stuff, you guys are pros. You navigate EFS mod portal to do attendance, for God's sake. If you can do that, you can fill out these loan forms. They're really not so hard. So comparing one to the other, loan forms way easier. So just wanted to throw that out to you guys because really there are plenty of opportunities right now to make sure that you guys don't get hurt or don't have to either face closing your business or reducing your business. So please take them. Thanks, Allison.
Great, thank you, Howard. I just wanted to recap a little bit I want to thank everybody for attending. We have over 200 people that are participating in today's plan meeting. So let's keep that going even when we return back to normal. I want to see all 200 people in the ELC the next time. I wanted to share that we might have this again next week. We're going to see if there's more information to share. Just please be on the lookout for information and emails from us. Thank you for all you do. Be safe, stay healthy. You guys are doing amazing. Another shameless plug for trainings that are coming up next week. Just check those out. I don't think anybody else has anything to say from the ELC side, but we will stop. We will take questions now. If anybody has questions, if your question did not get answered, no worries, because we have the questions, we're saving them, and we could always reach back out to you. So we'll just wait a moment to see if anything else comes in. If you want to ask a question and you want to raise your hand, you can raise your hand now, and I will do my best to scroll through the 200 attendees and look for raise hands and I can unmute you. So I think we have one person. Meredith? Nope. Let's see, any hands raised? Okay, I'm not seeing any hands raised at the moment. Let's see, let's see. Okay, well, I guess we don't have any other hand. Oh, wait, we have some questions. So, Howard, I'm gonna send this over to you. How will medical and first responder staff find out about childcare payment assistance?
Am I unmuted, Allison?
You are unmuted as always.
Awesome, okay. So OEL itself is getting a communication together. I think it's going to come out today or tomorrow, but we'll also do one. The hard part about this, we know that it's available. We don't know all the detail yet in terms of what they need to produce and how reimbursement. We know most of it. Hopefully we'll know it by the end of the day, and we'll pump it out through, I know, the county commission offices, through the newspaper, and we'll send it to all of you guys too, as soon as we have enough detail to be responsible about it, which we're hoping is today. But from what we hear, again, the rule will be any first responder or medical personnel, regardless of income, meaning they don't need to be SR, are eligible to use child care services, and OEL would reimburse. And that would be for, if I remember correctly, and this would be solid inside of any communication, not this verbal one for me, but I think it's up to 3 months. Yeah, hopefully that answers as much of your question as I can right now.
Okay, and then one more question. Are we going to be paid SR and VPK for the month of April if we are closed? Yes, correct?
Yeah, every indication is yes. Again, my only proviso there, and because OEL didn't say it, and I'm cautious by nature, is if any child has transferred from your center, you would not be paid for them. I could be totally wrong about that. We're checking into it, but that said, almost no children have transferred anywhere. I just don't want any unhappy, unwelcome surprises there from folks who think that they're being paid month after month for children they may not be paid for. So we'll check into that further, and we have checked into it further. As soon as we get an answer on that one, we'll let you know.
Great. And I'm going to throw it back to Renee. Renee, you are unmuted, so now you should be able to unmute yourself. You have to unmute yourself now. Just give us one moment as we all try to manage this new technology for all of us. Renee? There you go. Now you should be good.
There we go. Okay, sorry about that, everyone. I just wanted to elaborate very briefly on something Howard said about the first responders. In terms of, while we will get the provider community any information that we get from OEL, we've also here at ELC reached out to the county commission and informed them about this funding for first responders and medical personnel. and they are going to get it into the right hands. So they are going to communicate this as well from a county perspective. I'm trying to have a coordinated effort, right? Because they'll know who to go to. Additionally, here at the ELC, we've personally reached out to the hospital districts and the sheriff's office, understanding that there's many different municipalities in Broward, but we have reached out to the hospital districts, and we are trying to get that word out there so that parents are aware, and then we can work with them to find an open center. Okay, so I just wanted to add to that. Allison, are there any more questions?
Yeah, there's just one or two more questions coming in. Amy Unger, if you could just repeat, and I will probably have to unmute you, the deadline for the 2021 profiles. Amy, you are unmuted. You should be able to unmute yourself now. Okay, we'll wait for Amy to join back up to us.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, great.
Okay, so technically the deadline for the profiles was actually back in February. You want a new deadline? How about next Friday? I'm gonna to submit by next Friday, which would be the, let's see, 17th? Yes, if you haven't submitted your 2021 profile yet, submit it by Friday, April 17th.
And Amy, will there be another survey on closure days, or should they just contact you guys directly if they're going to close?
At this point, we've gotten 60 to 70% of the providers have already submitted their answers. So if you send out a survey, we just end up getting a lot of duplicate responses, and it's hard to get through them all quickly. I think at this point, it's probably most efficient if the providers contact their provider relations specialist directly to let us know if they've had any changes.
Okay, that's great. And let me see. Okay, for right now, I think that's it. Whatever other questions come in, we will be able, oh, here's the one I wanted to ask. With the suspension of caregiver copays, do we know when they will be reinstituted?
No.
No? Okay.
No.
And we do have one other, we have a hand raised. Andrew, I'm going to unmute you. If you want to
Hey,
ask.
do you hear me?
Yep.
You hear me? Hey,
Yes.
thank you so much for all this invaluable information. Really appreciate it. I didn't see the slides from Pablo's presentation. Are you going to email them out to all of us?
Yeah, they
Can
will
you?
be emailed after today.
Thank you.
Oh, that's it? Okay. Okay, well, I guess with that, we will, once again, I want to thank you all on behalf of all the ELC. We want to thank you for all that you do. Be safe, stay healthy. You guys are the greatest, and look out for further communications from us, and have a great Wednesday.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye, everybody.
Thank you for keeping us unmuted, Allison.
You're welcome. But now I'm going to end it, so.
Bye.